Development for Mega Man on the Game Boy returned to the enthusiastic team at Minakuchi Engineering. They had made the first handheld adventure and set out for the second game, which turned out unimpressive at best. Minakuchi's team were actually big fans of Mega Man, and it showed when they were entrusted with a third Game Boy title. That's right, it's Mega Man 3 with Roman numerals, known in the fanbase as Mega Man World 3. Now, I recognize I've been covering a lot of Mega Man and these videos don't get much attention. This might be the least known game of the bunch, but these retro reviews are my own adventure and I want to document every game that I play. While this was the best of the 3 available Game Boy games at the time, that isn't saying much. Looking into the future, however, Mega Man World 4 and 5 were innovative, taking steps beyond Capcom's successful but worn-out formula. Mega Man World 3 played a small and important part in getting there. This game may not be anything special, but Capcom put their faith back in Minakuchi Engineering, which gave them a chance to work better with the tricky Game Boy hardware. Perhaps they would have been better earlier if they had been given the appropriate time to develop their skills. What a novel concept. Following on from the other Game Boy adventures, the third title designs new stages for Robot Masters from the NES Mega Man 3 and 4. The first stage selection contains Sparkman, Gemini Man, Snake Man, and Shadow Man. Despite these bosses being from console Mega Man 3, the selection screen takes its music from Mega Man 4. This game mostly recycles music from these home console titles, and the renditions are very good. I don't know why they couldn't also bring in the correct theme for the first stage selection though. You'll see later that both games' boss themes are used. My first impressions of the stage design were good, while I was disappointed by the floaty controls returning. I wish they could have built on one of the things that Mega Man World 2 actually did right. Handheld Mega Man also gains the Charged Buster for the first time, keeping up to date with his home console abilities. I selected Snake Man stage first, and I was pleased by many of the reimagined challenges. In particular, the giant snake mini-bosses now force you to work around their wavy tail segments, which could be ignored on the NES. It looked like well-planned stage design had returned to the monochrome Mega Man. And credit where it's due, the Charged Buster seems fine-tuned in this game. Perhaps it takes a fraction of a second too long to charge, but otherwise its power is just right. It helped in Snake Man's fight after a short struggle. The first boss is always likely to be one of the hardest you'll fight in these games. The Search Snake is the weapon gained from Snake Man, and Gemini Man is very afraid of those snakes. His stage tries its best to stop you from reaching him. This design is not so good. The underground section goes all out on a returning gimmick from the NES, and I was not a fan. Large walls of eggs, I guess robot eggs, are placed throughout, and when shot, an evil tadpole floats slowly towards you. They're called poles for short. There are some creative uses of this, such as making a safe platform over spikes towards the end. Even that got frustrating, however. The earlier sections aren't much fun at all, slowly shooting through the walls. You can charge up your buster to shoot through them all at once, but this wasn't applicable as often as I wanted. Gemini Man's fight was pretty good in this game though. I wasn't sure how the smaller screen size would affect him, and the developer's solution was to only clone him once. This was a lot more manageable and easier to understand than his NES counterpart. Shadow Man's stage felt insignificant. It introduced bomb platforms right at the beginning, which count down when stepped on before exploding. This gimmick ends up getting used in a few stages, and it always felt unnecessary. The shadow segments didn't feel special either, and the Gemini laser used against Shadow Man still lags badly, so I wasn't keen to test it outside of this fight. The last of the initial stages belongs to Sparkman, which was where I started noticing a pattern. This game undoubtedly stepped up its design quality from the other Game Boy games. All in all, I felt like it was just fine and nothing more, but this was much better than most games for this system. There's a big reason holding it back from excellence though. You'll make your way through these stages without too much trouble, except every now and then something dumb will happen that kills you. Basically, the stage design showed that it was clearly planned out, while the team at Minakuchi Engineering let their inexperience show at times like these. That aside, they deserve credit for fixing the Spark Shock weapon, which was previously one of the worst in the series. And now we interrupt our scheduled programming to bring you a very awkward interlude level. This didn't need to be in the game. It serves as a transition between the Mega Man 3 and 4 Robot Masters, and it doesn't work. The view of Wily's castle is good as usual, with far too much screen flashing before anything happens. Then Mega Man teleports to the cliff with a view of the castle before quickly teleporting away again. I don't get it. The stage that follows is not really a stage. It utilizes some tricky platforming for about 10 seconds. You might die, but a game over wouldn't cost you anything here. The main event is instead a boss fight with the giant Susie in a cramped room. This whole thing is very random since I haven't seen the regular Susie enemies since Mega Man 1, and it was an interesting fight. Unnecessary again though, because it repeats itself later on without any changes as far as I could see. When the fight is over, Mega Man walks into a teleport capsule to go into another regular stage select screen. What was wrong with going straight from one stage selection to another? The first group of Mega Man 4 bosses to return on Game Boy were Dive Man, Skull Man, Drill Man, and Dust Man. Conveniently, this is another group with a previously existing weakness chain, Dust to Skull to Dive to Drill. This was my order, although Dust Man is vulnerable to drill bombs now to complete a new loop. I wish some kind of secondary weakness could be implemented for these bosses though. It's back to the Buster for the first Robot Master because you don't have its weakness unlocked. You could use any other weapon too, but it will deal the same amount of damage as the Buster. It's not that I mind the challenge, I'm just thinking in terms of adding more to the game when it's generally nothing special. These stages all have design elements that impressed me, but the aftertaste wasn't so nice because of those random things that kill you. In particular, the shield attackers don't work with the cramped screen size. They're returning enemies from the console Mega Man 4, and they're significantly overused in the second half of this game. I honestly think that this game could be called good if these enemies were retuned or replaced with better challenges. It would still be a rather unmemorable game, but my experience would have been much smoother. Let's take a quick tour through the aspects of these stages individually. Dustman's stage dragged on, and the transition into the trash compactor was atrocious. Atrocious, you could say, or even just trash. I commend the developers for fixing the up and down enemies at least. Now there's enough time to react to them when they rise from a pit, and they made for a decent challenge which I didn't think was possible. Skullman's stage wins a lot of cool points, and despite the lack of color, I would argue that this stage looks better on Game Boy than on the NES. I love the mechanical appearance of the skeletal floors and walls, and the background is also more detailed. Unfortunately, the layout was messy. It wasn't clear that the ribs would damage Mega Man even though they were spiky, and the slug-like Emorm enemies were invisible at first. Something doesn't seem right there. They suddenly appeared to drop on my head, which I didn't appreciate. Then it was time for weird water controls with Dive Man. Mega Man's jumps are already floaty, and now throwing in water physics, he becomes surprisingly difficult to control. This isn't what I signed up for with Mega Man Underwater. I've always had fun with his underwater stages due to the precise controls, and that precision wasn't present here. This stage felt like it was designed for better controls, and there were sections waiting for mines to blow up, adding no value. That said, I liked the rest of the layout and the whale mini-bosses. Drill Man stage was the last one, and I don't have any notes, which is probably a positive given my habit of breaking down every level's flaws. Shoutouts to these two E-Tanks hanging out together. It's time for the end game, starting with another very short stage. I approve of this one though. Mega Man gets face to face with Dr. Wily, but they won't fight each other yet. The story of these Game Boy games involves extra robots constructed by Wily called the Mega Man Killers. Meet Punk, and what a punk he is. I really like him. He offers a very difficult fight in which Mega Man could die after taking damage only 3 times and has no weaknesses. He can also block attacks by rolling into a spiky ball and then charging across the screen. The screen size is a little too small to properly react to this, but this is a perfect fight otherwise. It's the right difficulty at the end of the game, and since the whole stage is this fight, game overs mean nothing. Well, except that you would lose your E-Tanks. Only one level remains, and I think it should have been split into 2. In its current state, it's the level that never ends. The giant Susie returns as a boss in the middle of the level, and I think it would have made a better halfway point splitting Wily's castle into 2. The level contains a lot of callback challenges, some hard and some easy, and a lot of extending the castle for no good reason. I like the feel of the music though. This game doesn't contain many original compositions, but this track stands out from the new ones. It ends with a showdown against Dr. Wily as you'd expect. It's pretty simple, which isn't suitable for the end of the game. Considering the length of the stage, this simplicity is nice because a game over would send you back to the beginning of it. However, this is not how you create a satisfying ending. It's too easy to dodge the attacks in the first phase, and Wily's machine doesn't even move in the second phase. It ends very slowly as it's only vulnerable to Punk's weapon, the Screw Crusher, taking one piece off the health bar at a time. The ending theme is pretty lame too, but I wouldn't use the word lame to describe the game overall. Mediocre perhaps. The good and bad moments seem to cancel each other out, leaving it at just fine. The difficulty is more balanced than the other Game Boy titles, while still not as refined as the NES titles. It stands out the least among all the Mega Man games I've played, which is not often a good sign. All in all though, I still enjoyed myself during many parts of this game. Therefore, my final score for Game Boy Mega Man 3 will be 6.1 out of 10. Minakuchi Engineering didn't create anything special with this game, but they would use it to create special things later. That's what makes it an important part of Mega Man history, although it doesn't necessarily make it a game worth playing. Under normal circumstances, I won't be recommending this game to newcomers. If you love Game Boy games and you're not too familiar with Mega Man, you might love this game. I can't deny that it's high quality for the tiny handheld system. Other than getting your hands on an original cartridge, the best way to play this game now is on Nintendo Switch Online. Let's jump back in time to see how this game was covered at release. Nintendo Power previewed the game in the same issue as their coverage of Mega Man 5 NES. The preview was 4 pages long, but Mega Man III was never given a score in their Power rankings. Electronic Gaming Monthly showed continued enthusiasm for the series and gave this game an average of 8 out of 10. Meanwhile, Famitsu showed continued disinterest for the series, scoring a new low average of 5.25 out of 10. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy, initially released in 1992? Before you click away, don't forget to click like and subscribe. You know the drill, man. As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self.
Can I go kablooey?